even without the backlash to government, um, the Dangote firm did come out to state that the article by Premium Times was mischievous and misleading, that they were actually not the only ones granted that waiver, that there were other companies that were granted the waiver as well. And I think one of them that was also discovered within this time was also BUA, a rival uh, competitor in cement, who also said that they were also granted the waiver, but the waiver wasn't blanket. It wasn't like an all-out go ahead and resume your usual exporting. That they were given a limited waiver to push some product across the border to Niger. All right, and that it was a one-off, and that they intend to, and they're optimistic that more waivers would come. Well, that is as it is from the various private sector players. We're yet to find out whether it was more than BUA and Dangote that was involved in this waiver. But on the surface, it is very, it's a disappointment. And when I say disappointment, in the sense that how could this have been managed better? Why didn't the government make this public? That just like they make public, for example, in issues where they, I think between the CBN and the Ministry of Finance, and there have been some back integration commodities that the federal government has stopped the importation of some certain, like not just rice, maize, etc. But they come back and explain to the people, okay, to be able to create.
They did that. They did that
We're
for
going to
maize
give,
recently,
yes, we're going to give a little concession to a few companies. So it's made public, even though some people may have difference in views about it, but at least it is transparent. But in this instance, nobody was informed about this waiver that was given to a few companies, and you know the hardship that ensued from those who depend on this continental trade that they had lost, especially within this COVID period. So we're yet to hear from the government as to why this was done in such a, for the lack of a better word, shady manner. Okay. Now the question here is, if you can give a few companies waiver, why not give the rest? I think.
Why not open the borders? That's
No,
another question that people are asking.
I'm not. That's what I'm saying. That whatever wisdom they use to grant a few companies waiver, if you could give a few, why not give the rest? The issue about opening the border has been at the top of issues causing strife within the country and economic deprivation and struggle. In the last meeting, I think that was on Sunday, when the Southwest governors, traditional leaders, and federal government officials met, one of the issues that came on the top was that the Southwest economy was highly hampered with the closure of the border. So I think there's enough pressure on the federal government, but in their actions, we expect the government to be above board and sincere, so that you prevent outrages like this, especially at this time when people are struggling, tightening their belts to survive.
All right, thank you very much. We have some comments on WhatsApp to this story. Ken says, Dangote cement exempted from border closure. All animals are equal, but some equals are more animal. Twisting that
Some
word.
animals are more
I know,
equal
but
than the
he's
rest.
twisted it. It will be the play on words. Obed Chuk says, it still amazes me why our borders are closed to incoming goods, but open to certain clan and companies to export when we haven't got enough. But what's this special interest of this government to Benin? Niger, by the way, they better start speaking out to us.
Well, I would say this. His first statement there is what we want to avoid.
Yeah.
He said to certain clan and peoples, you're giving the wrong impression. It's not just about the optics. You were confirming what people had thought. And this government in other areas needs to be careful to ensure that its actions are not misread in the eyes of the people. Remember, tensions are high already.
Yeah, and there's a need to build trust with the people, and this doesn't help that in any way. Boke from UK says, what's the essence of the strict border closure? Did it mean local companies weren't allowed to export? Does this make economic sense? Let's move on to some, what looks like very good news, like progress in Lagos State. This is an issue we've debated a number of times on the show. Sanwo-Olu moves to abolish pension for ex-governors, deputies. This was signed into law, the Public Office Holder Payment of Pension Law 2007, signed by the then governor, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which has in its package what could be best described as largesse for anyone
The
who
parachutes.
served as a governor or deputy governor, even if it's for 1 year or one term, for life, salary for life, even if they go on to take on other other
It still
appointments
remains.
like or electoral appointments like senators or ministers, they still get paid.
Mm.
So please take us through this proposal.
Well, the real story here is actually the budget that was presented,
Yes.
and they're two in one. However, the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, did unfold a plan, all right, with the submission of the 2021 appropriation bill, which is the budget, all right, for about to the tune of 1.155 trillion naira, all right, which is a little less than what was presented in the 2020 budget at about 1.68. Now, um, what he was stating here, basically, that the budget to rekindle hope, all right, given uh, um, the the issues that Lagos State had faced in terms of COVID, as well as the economic hardship, and also coming into at this late part of the year, the NSARS protest that brought about some aspects that the government is looking at reconstruction. Therefore, in presenting this budget, they said they'll look at various aspects of revenue. There's no time to really break it down. I wish I had some time to do that. But they're looking at seeing how they can create employment opportunities for their youth, okay, and also address the COVID-19 pandemic requirements to be able to scale through in 2021, right?
Yes.
And also address the digitization strategy, which was supposed to affect environment, health services, as well as street lighting and then the energy sector. Now, to this budget presentation, he also presented and informed the House that he was going to push an executive bill to repeal that act on pensions that was already established in 2007 by, like you said, the then Governor Ahmed Bola Tinubu, which was granting a so-called pension package. And what did this package contain? A bit of it was that the former governors would be entitled to 6 new cars every 3 years, 100% of the basic salary, which amounted to about 7.7 million per annum, free healthcare for himself and his members of his family, and also furniture allowance, which is about 300% of the annual basic, as that 23 million. And this also included the deputy governors as well, fully paid vacations, medical insurance, and other juicy perks. And
in this same Nigeria.
In this same Nigeria. And at some point, even the House made a move to ensure that some of its key officers would enjoy the same pension. And I mean, it went on and on. Well, some have said that it was an immoral act, because given the burdens that the Lagos State government carries in terms of infrastructure for over 20 million people, that how could a few executive officers enjoy this loot? I mean, was the government able to afford this amid other requirements, amid other pressures? So the governor said that in a bid to save money, in a bid to also manage the costs, which they haven't, which they're struggling on revenue, that the Executive Act would address this. Now, the truth is, it is a good move. However, it's an executive order. Will it be sufficient to be able to repeal an existing law? That is yet to be seen. Also, I think the governor also, and what you expect is not the governor only, you expect the House members who represent the various constituencies to be able to dig out where leakages, where excesses, and where options are within the budget, to be able to ensure that the budget addresses the pain points of citizens and residents within tax-paying residents of Lagos State.
All right, thank you so very much. We have Mayowa on Twitter has this to say. He said, Jide Sanwo-Olu is on the right move. We can't keep babysitting ex-governors and deputies running into millions. And then Larry says, good idea scrapping the life pension for ex-governors. The real question is, if you're removing the life pension for ex-governors, what are you replacing it with? A one-off $1 million payoff?
Well, they had a pension plan before. This was an upgrade. Serap, even in a suit that had been in the courts before now, had said that due to the fact that it was immoral and illegal, that the government should collect it back from those who benefited.
Ah, that's another one. That's another angle. Interesting. Let's move on. Premium Times, NSAS, Man sues Aisha Yesufu, Falano, Davido, Burna Boy, Don Jazzy, others. I'm actually quite happy that Premium Times did not use the term man because, honestly, some prominent Nigerians and activists who took part in or showed support for the NSAS protests. Police brutality across the country have been sued at the Chief Magistrate Court in Abuja for promoting the protest.
Well, is there much of a story here other than the complainants? That's Kenneth Chukwu Keke, who filed the suit at the Federal Magistrate Courts, did say that he made a claim that the riots that followed the protest led
Which
to
had
destruction.
nothing to do with protest.
No, I'm just stating what his complaint was, that the protest led to destruction of his property, and therefore wants the promoters of the protest to be brought to justice. Now, that's the suit filed. However, question is, and he filed the suit against about 50 names who were popular Nigerians and activists, even including
why did you stop at 50? You should have sued everyone.
Don Jazzy, Tahoma, even the senior pastor of Bay Christian Center, Samademi, Kanu Wankwo, Uche Jumbo, Pamilari Ayo. I mean, the list goes on. And he said that what they did was that they used Twitter to conspire among themselves to commit misdemeanor, all right, promoting the actions. Now, the truth is this, most people who have an understanding of the law know that this is a very frivolous suit, and expect the judge or whichever court entertains this to be able to carry out the law to its fullest and take the right actions. However, there is a spin, and beyond this suit, it's something that currently actions by government in clamping down on the alleged NSAS promoters seems as if there's an attempt to connect the peaceful protesters and the violent, vandalizing actions of hoodlums within that same protest. And it's important that we distinguish between the two, not just as citizens, but peaceful protest is guaranteed and enshrined by the Constitution, of which the government itself, both at state and the federal government, had acknowledged that the concerns, let's even use the 5 for 5, were germane. So this spin moving on, and I expect the government to also protect and distinguish it. But it seems, as we will read in some other stories, that this is not the case anymore.
Right, Foluago says, curious how a government pampers terrorists and treats peaceful protesters like terrorists, just like you mentioned, it can only be here to help Nigeria. I know you mentioned that. I mean, like you said, we don't even know why this is, because it's as a Nigerian, it's constitutionally, it's your right constitutionally to protest, to peaceful protest,
and also be protected.
And be protected. So he said that because he suffers no loss, and I mean, just not just leave him, but it's
well. I know. I'm sure it will be dismissed as quick as it came in, except hopefully, if there are other that will be made.
His Yinka said, "I wonder why he left out Whiskey than Sanwo-Olu, because Sanwo-Olu too carried NSAS banner." That's a good point. CSA withdraws registration of Enough is Enough. The Corporate Affairs Commission yesterday cancelled the registration of the business name Enough is Enough. From using their Twitter handle at CAC Nigeria 1, they said, based on the provisions of Section 579, subsection 2 of the Companies and Allied Matters Act, the Corporate Affairs Commission has cancelled the registration of the business name Enough is Enough with immediate effect. Please, there was an update, or there is an update from EIE themselves, that advocacy group.
Yes.
However, there's a reason that the CAC have highlighted. I'd like you to do that, and then I'll just give a response from EIE that enough is enough advocacy group.
Yes, in this tweet that came out, I think it was yesterday, what was said was that the registration name Enough is Enough BN221072 was registered with immediate effect, and that the company that was registered in 2012 to engage in general contract sales of sports equipment and promotions had deviated from its main objectives over the course of time. Consequently, the Commission has removed it from its database and advised the proprietors to surrender the certificate earlier issued to them. Now, we don't have the full background to this story because it seems at this point in time we need to connect the dots as to a lot of what is going on by various government organs, okay, with alleged NSARS promoters. And why I say this is instances. We also know that EIE, Enough is Enough organization, had been at the forefront of advocacy and protests were required on a lot of social welfare issues and human rights issues for Nigerians. Now, the question is, and we still expect a breakdown from government, the CAC, yes, has the powers to deregister, but can it make a judgment in this angle is yet to be known. Secondly, as you mentioned, the EIE that we know, the organization that fights for human rights, civil society, has come out to say that their own registration is intact and that the company that the CAC was referring to was not theirs. And that's really, really, really funny because at some point it's also an indictment. Did they hit and miss?
That's what's in, well, that's not been confirmed, that, but a number of people suspect that. But here's the exact statement from the EIE's Twitter handle. Enough is Enough Nigeria, aka EIE Nigeria, aka EIE, is registered as the EIE Project Limited Guarantee. A big thank you to those who have reached out and spoken up for us, Aluta Continua, Victoria, etc. So just to mention that it wasn't them, and there might have been some mix-up because the CAC did say that they were doing, the company they registered was carrying out activities that they hadn't stated in their documents, in their registration documents. CBN accuses NSAS campaigners of terrorism. Punch newspaper. The federal government was able to freeze the accounts of 20 NSAS campaigners after telling the Federal High Court in Abuja that the funds in the accounts might have been linked to terrorist activities. It might sound like a broken record, Divo, but why is it so easy to? We have bigger terrorist groups, and just like I think it was Fola that said that they're treating protesters, peaceful protesters, as terrorists in a country that guarantees you constitutionally that you have a right to peaceful protest. But they haven't been able to locate or trace funds for Boko Haram. Meanwhile, UAE has convicted 6 Nigerians for links to Boko Haram through funding. Please break this story down to us.
Well, this is like a breakdown of what we had already heard earlier in the week when many people were taking their position on the government's, it's apparent government's clampdown on alleged NSARS protesters. And this is happening, like you've heard in the earlier stories, EIE was deregistered. And many people thought it was the EIE that we knew. Also, I think one of the other promoters, Duale, was prevented from traveling at the airport, and she wasn't told what was the reason until she could see that it was linked to her contribution to the protest. All right. Also, we've seen in this case where some of the NSARS promoters who were active on Twitter were fingered out and their accounts were frozen. Now, there was an uproar as to why the CBN had that right, whether they had that right or not. However, CBN did seek an ex parte injunction, which many have questioned the sequence because the ex parte injunction came after the accounts were frozen. Now, the CBN did say, I think it was an instruction from the from the federal government, that there was a link, suspected link with terrorist activities. Now, fine. I mean, the country, in the bid to preserve national security, can carry out such investigations. But the question is, and what many people ask, why were they not told? Why were the accounts frozen before they were even informed as to what happened? Secondly, Um, the If such takes place, and because the ex parte injunction grants them about 95 days, it was granted about I think 90 days to keep those accounts frozen, as against the request of 180 days. Some ask, how do they expect those people in those accounts to survive? Aisha Yusufu, in her own response, said that the freezing of accounts is illegal by government, and that to treat them like terrorists was condemnable. Now, and this is where it doesn't look good on governments. It seems that you have a heavy hand on people who we all know, it was established, were fighting for the rights of Nigerians. These attempts in different aspects to criminalize their actions in terms of peace, and not just peaceful protests. What were they protesting for? They were not only protesting as youths to live, they were also protesting for the improvement of the police service. Now, if you are to this, what you are saying is that Nigerians are not entitled to speak up about their own welfare, their own lives as Nigerians. Government needs to be very careful, because the truth, with the outcome of what happened last time, of which we have not even gotten a clear explanation from government as to what took place at the Lekki shootings, all right? And you saw the rampage that followed suit by hoodlums and miscreants nationwide, coupled with the looting of the COVID palliatives and even some private. Government needs to be more reconciliatory in a time like this, honor the pursuit of its own justified citizens, than to keep quiet if they haven't been the ones trying to criminalize the efforts of law-abiding Nigerians. They need to be careful about this. Remember, one of the biggest things that was lost, or that caused this pressure to mount, was the fact that had lost hope in their government, lost trust in their government, that they could address it. Most times when they had spoken, they had complained. And SARS didn't start today. It started many years ago.
Yeah.
They hadn't seen much reaction from the government. So I really plead with the government. President Buhari, you had stated 2 weeks ago to the youths through your media aides that they should not be afraid of speaking up, that they should come forward. The Senate President and the Speaker of the House had acknowledged that we have heard you loud and clear. So how do you explain these actions from various organs of governments and agencies? Of course, deal with those who broke the law by destruction and vandalization.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable. That's not allowed. But for those who kept up a peaceful protest by any forms and means, please, you need to maintain and protect them, because here again, if you didn't protect them on the grounds of protest, you're also not protecting them with some of these actions that are being taken.
Excellent, thanks. Move on very quickly to the Pengasin strike. Over 2.9 billion liters of petrol available, NNPC assures Nigerians. They say they have enough to last us to the
for about
festive
6 months.
season.
What they're saying is supply is in store, that at this Yuletide, because there was a bit of apprehension by many that fuel wouldn't be available, especially at this year-end season where people celebrate Christmas. But the GMD Public Affairs, the GM Public Affairs was informing Nigerians that despite the strike or whenever it would end, because they hope to address it very soon enough, that there was sufficient fuel to last Nigerians. And 3 months means November, December, all the way into January.
Thank you. I think this is a very important headline. IG Inspector General of Police Mohammed Adamu, and he says inadequate funding hampering fight against banditry. Others. He appeared before the Senate yesterday to defend the police's 2021 budget, and he's mentioned that the reason why they've not been able to contain, crimes and banditry is because of the lack of funding. I know this is not news. We've talked about this a number of times. He's even alluded to the fact that they don't even have enough money to fuel their cars and the motorcycles. Please take us to the story.
Well, this is something we have been hammering for some time now. He said the 2020 appropriation, even though it was appropriated about 14.2 billion, they didn't really get all of it, okay? And even the amounts that they got, or that was appropriated, really couldn't deal with the issues, coupled with the operational upscaling that had to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. Because remember, at that time, police had to be nationwide, to keep the lockdown and orders that were taking place. Now, we know that the police is in a chronic state of disrepair, all right? And like I've always said, to put an end to this, government is limited in its resources. That is a given, and we understand that. And I'm talking about the federal government. However, police needs to double up in terms of their recruitments for the 350, more or less double that count for a population of 200 million. Police also requires training, adequate training, not just for recruits, but adequate training across the ranks. All right. Police also requires equipment. All right, from technology, from even arms and arsenary to mobility, operational equipment and gears. These three aspects, and police require welfare for themselves and for their families. These aspects cannot be dealt with the minuscule or paltry sums that they are given. If the police is vested with the mandate of internal security, given the fact that Nigeria has not fought an external war in a long time, apart from the insurgency, I expect the National Assembly to reappropriate the portions that are given to the military and take at least, my recommendation, a quarter of those billions and hand over to the police to assist them to meet up, because we can't continue screaming about the low performance of the police without giving them the necessary enablement to deliver.
Thank you very much. Kule from Ikeja, Nigerian government can indeed mess with one's sanity. They see white and compel you to believe it is white. Peaceful protesters have become terrorists overnight, while the real terrorists are becoming reformed and repentant Nigerians. Final comment from Dare in France. Targeting these people involved in the protest, tough. Who do we report the Nigerian government to? Thank you all so much for your contributions. It's made the conversation this morning richer. Big thanks to Divo Okore. Thank you, Divo. You can find Divo Okore at Divo Okore on Twitter. Find us at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. Let's continue the conversation online. Next, it's Locker Room 981, and Tega will be here to give us all the latest news, information, and analysis on sports news across the world.
The headlines, the stories, the news.
Thank you.
Have you seen it?
In-depth analysis of national current affairs.
Freshly pressed.
Freshly pressed on Smooth
98.1.